Nikki, yay!
Hi.
It's so nice to talk with you today. I've got a lot of questions for you, so we're just going to launch into them. Nikki, we've known each other for a few years, and your answer will probably be the same as mine for this question, but please can you describe why you are so passionate about medicinal plants, the work that you do, and using food and nutrition as medicine?
Okay, so I'll start. Well, thank you for having me. I love these kind of things because it gets the message out there, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for having me. So to start with the medicinal herbs, I've been passionate about plants my whole life, and I guess I was introduced to them by my grandmother at a young age, just with growing plants and using herbal medicine as her first sort of protocol with any kind of illness. And I guess those seeds were planted young, and I saw the results, and it was normal for me to that's where our go-to as a family. So my mother as well used herbal medicine, and I could see as time went by and sort of having a lot of work that I've done or traveling overseas, I could see some miracles happening with these plants and how little we really did know overall and what they really could do. And I still think we're only really just scratching the surface of what these medicinal plants can really do. And both of us, you and I, have both seen some work that these plants do.
Absolutely.
And how can you not be passionate once you've had your eyes open to what they do? And I think as for food and nutrition and plant-based nutrition, how I sort of come about that is it's been a long time for me. And I think one of our foundations of health comes down to nutrition. Once we've got sleep sorted, nutrition sorted, those fundamental health aspects of health, once they are sorted, we can build from that. It's one of those important things that we need to get done early to be able to build any kind of healing, as along with controlling stress levels and those kind of things. But we can't get anywhere without good nutrition and good sleep. Those are my two fundamentals, actually.
So when did natural medicine become your life purpose? Because you've got a good childhood background. It's an ancestral sort of thing that's been passed down. But when did it become your life purpose? What happened? When did you decide, I want to share this?
Well, I think it would have started very early, that I was making my own medicines very young as a child. And, you know, playing around with herbs and doing things, making potions as kids do, but really felt genuinely interested and believed that these were very special potions that I was making. But it wasn't. I still went through a bit of a process. I've always been very much into the outdoors and into nature and living naturally, and it was always there. And I did some study overseas and always sort of dabbled with it, but I was an outdoor instructor. I was a climbing instructor and did outdoor work, and I'd see all these plants and herbs on these walks that we would do. We would be taking groups away, and I was always interested, and I'd often talk about the plants then. And it wasn't until having my eldest boy that I really thought, well, this is actually, I always come back to these plants and healing, and it was always there, but to make it my full time, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, for work, and it becomes part of you. I couldn't imagine not doing this forever now.
I know. You're just going to do it. You mentioned before sleep and nutrition, and you've just mentioned about taking people out and doing exercise. So that's probably the third leg of the stool, as it were. That's important too.
Absolutely. And being out for fresh air outside, all those things that humans are meant to be connected with nature.
Yes.
And for us to have optimal health, and we just need those fundamental aspects covered before we can sort out the hormones and things like that, once we've got those bases covered.
Yeah. So you can be sort of hiking or mountain biking, or even just sitting by a tree.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm very much into the sort of slightly on the extreme side of things. I do think for me it would be surfing or paddling out, or being in the forest. Just being outdoors, for me, I think it's an important part of our human interaction with nature. And some people will go weeks without being outdoors. If you're living in a city and you're working indoors, and a lot of healing does have to come from, as we know, vitamin D manufacturing from the sunlight, or just having serotonin from sunlight coming through the eyes. We are very much part of human well-being is connecting with the outdoors, I believe, and I guess a lot of people believe that.
And how we do the serotonin and vitamin D is probably
Yeah.
fodder for another
Yeah.
interview.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, so we've gone from the past, but things we can do sort of now. How
Yeah.
do you see plant medicine rolling out in the future? How would you like to see it?
I would like to see it be mainstream like it is at the moment. We're going through, a really interesting time as we're all experiencing in the world. We will need to tap into the healing that plants have to offer, because
Indeed.
I personally can't see another way through this without us maximizing the use of these plants as medicine. I think what we're going to find, like generally over time, even if you look at medical reports, that we have had an increase in things like antibiotic resistance, things that could have been prevented, that we know our plants work really well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. On to another question. What are some of the best things that you've done to change your life with natural healing?
I think, again, it would have been a young age. Nutrition, I think that's massive, and it's not an obsessive and focusing on it all the time, but just eating whole foods most of the time. Not being obsessed and looking at fats and carbohydrates, or none of those things are all out the door. Just focusing on whole foods, organic as possible, natural diet most of the time, without, we're not going to go to people's houses for dinner and start picking their food to bits. Like it is about going with the flow to a certain extent. But I have found diet and being outdoors, those things, and sleep, those three fundamental things that we've talked about before. But for me, it has been, I would have made those whole food dietary changes probably near sort of 25 years ago. And I can see the benefits now. I feel strong and energetic, and those foods do keep fueling me without being over the top or having food shipped from all over the world that grow in one small region. It's just natural whole foods.
Yeah, from where you live, from the soil that you are living on.
Absolutely. Seasonal when you can, like the odd, obviously I'm not going to stop eating chocolate, which unfortunately we have tried to grow in New Zealand, but it doesn't work. So I'm not going to give up everything. But yes, generally, as the bulk of your food coming from locally sourced, seasonal, organic food, whole foods.
It was quite interesting because I'm thinking most people don't realize that there's options, like if you're gluten-free or something like that, there are dietary requirements. You do have a sort of a condition or a health issue that requires you to sort of eat a little bit differently. So there are options. You and I have both sort of experienced people coming to us going, oh my goodness, I've just discovered I'm gluten intolerant, and what can I eat? And it's about guiding people along that road of, you've actually got more options than you think you do. And I think this is what we're doing. We're sharing the knowledge, because a lot of people think, oh my goodness, I can't eat all that vast array of foods I was eating because it's got this thing in it that I can't have. But when you think about a gluten flour, for instance, there are so many gluten-free flours that are discovered from all around the world. So there are some things we can't grow in New Zealand, where we both are.
That is true. Yeah. And it's what it is. You work with what you can, what we have got, what is available, and what works for you.
Yes.
And I think we are also lucky and privileged to be able to have access to some of these grains. And, it is amazing what we can grow in New Zealand. And I guess a lot of farmers are coming to realize there is a lot more interest in these, say, gluten-free grains, or things that they may have not known that they could grow in New Zealand. And quinoa is a really good example.
Yes.
And we now can grow that in New Zealand, and we're brilliant at growing that. And I think that there's a lot of potential of what we can grow. And last year, at the beginning of this pandemic, I worked on a project called the Future Food Crops, what looked at some of the stuff that we could grow in New Zealand, and what was the most nutrient dense food that we could fit into the smallest amount of land, that didn't deplete the earth as well, that had a synergistic relationship with our humans' well-being in terms of nutritionally, and also supported the planet as well. He's just sorting something else, so we're all good.
We're all good. Okay, right. What's your most favorite part of being a natural health practitioner, healer? What's your most favorite part about being or sharing your knowledge? What is it?
I think it's empowering people to take these lifestyle changes and not only share them with their family, but also be able to implement these changes forever. Once people see or feel what it feels like to be well, they have it, as you know, such a profound effect on them that they start to spread the word. And a lot of people have the benefit of just helping one person. I guess it's seeing people feel good and have energy and seeing people well. I think it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
And highlighting, I guess, showing people what these plants can do and how powerful they are as medicine. I think as practitioners, I'm also making sure that these plants are showcased as the heroes in this healing modality.
Yeah, I agree, because people will come back and go, wow, you're amazing. And I'm like, well, you know, actually, I do this all the time, and you do what you do all the time. And it's like, you can't heal until you actually take the action for yourself.
That comes from the person, the plant, and I guess we're in between with this. We're facilitators in this process, that connection that people can with the plant.
Yes, we're just part of the puzzle, part of the story.
Yes, exactly.
Hey. Yeah, I love that. I love the changes that people can make and the happiness on their faces. It's just the best. My next question is about the genetic testing. Do you want to talk about this now or in another?
Yeah, I mean, we can have a brief talk about it.
Okay.
I use the genetic testing. It is a science, part of a science that we would use. Often a lot of what we would do as practitioners, as you know, may have not gone through the clinical trials that some pharmaceuticals go through, because a lot of reasons they don't fit that model. Whereas the genetic testing, I use it not for everyone. There's just cases that it just cuts out the guesswork when we can see some sort of behavior or some genetic dysfunction in the family. There might be cancer happening, generational cancer in the family, and we just want to see what the genes are doing, what the liver detoxification pathways are, how well they function, methylation, all those things. It just tidies up a good treatment plan in cases that are tricky. And I think if people can afford it, it's very useful information to know whether or not sort of how you metabolize hormones, or how your liver works well, or what your future is for cardiovascular health, or those kind of things. It just cuts out the guesswork, and it's useful information. And if people can afford it, it's useful for everyone to be able to have these tests done. And I use it typically on people that may have an example. I had a case of a 30-year history of clinical depression and on medication for a long time, and nothing really worked. And we sort of were able to get her very carefully, with the support of the GP as well, off the medication. And we could see issues with those genetics, with particular vitamin D receptors and methylation in this particular case, that we could work on, and we managed to get her off all her medication. So that's an example for the depression. So we have to be very careful with that when we're talking specifically about depression, but we can see stuff in the genetics. And once we can tidy that up, what those SNPs may be in those genes, we can compensate for them.
And that's basically looking at everybody as an individual, not as a one size fits all.
Absolutely, because it comes down to, as you know, you give someone a herb that might work for depression, for example, and it works for one person, not for the other. And there's so much chemistry going on in someone's body that it's definitely not the same for everyone. And sometimes it works brilliantly and you can rely on those antidepressant herbs, but sometimes it's much deeper than that, and you really need to start shifting stuff on a deep level. And in this case, genetically.
Yeah, what's underneath that? That's interesting, because there are herbs that you have, your favorite herbs that work really well for you, and I have herbs that work really well for me. And with the clients that we have, you know what herbs actually work best for them, and ones that, and they tell you, it's, you know, if they've been with us for a long time, it's, can I have this herb? They have an affinity of what herbs start working for them.
That's that empowering them to be able to make those decisions for themselves and work that out. And I guess that's the ultimate, that they can go away and start realizing what they need, and we are just supporting them when they do become empowered, and it becomes a long-term sort of lifestyle where they will use the herbal medicine as a first protocol for any illness.
Now, finally, I want to ask you that we're going to put links and things for the genetic testing so people can know more about that, what you do, all the nutritional courses and bits and bobs that you that you do.
Yeah.
So we're going to put all that for everybody to look at and delve into. So we just put links in, or where else can we go? Can you speak to that?
I think the best thing for now is just put the links in, and we're working on a few projects at the moment. So I've got my own projects, and I've got a few collaborations where we're putting everything together for the website so everyone can benefit from it, which might be courses. At the moment, I'm working on a project. We've got this pandemic going on, as we all know, we can't close our eyes to. And there's been a lot of talk with how do we get healthy? What do we do? Because the reality is this is the time to be healthy. And if you're not healthy, it's the time to wake up and make that decision that all of these changes will make a difference to someone's health, and we can get anyone's health back if we work hard enough, or we can at least give everyone a good chance to reach their potential in health.
And you're not just talking about physical health and food here, you're talking about mental health and emotional health and spiritual health in that sense. Yeah,
absolutely. So once we start with the physiological layer of health, we can start to access deeper levels of health. And as we know, as naturopaths and medical herbalists, we know that it's never just one aspect. Physical is one of them, and we often focus on these physiological aspects, but actually to have true health, we need to be able to be deeper and be happy and be able to be fulfilled in all those areas.
And that all happens just, holistically anyway, doesn't it? That's how
Absolutely.
it happens. Yeah.
And I do, through sort of my experience, I've found that once people have got that physical level sorted, they have a lot more energy to be able to work on the other layers.
Absolutely. That's what I found too. Yes. Bingo. There you go. Healed. All right. Is there anything else that you want to speak to me about, or is there anything that you think we've missed?
No, I think it's a good bit of basic information, and it sort of shows what I do, and it's similar to what you do. And as we all know with this kind of work, that it's not a one pill fix everything type of approach that we have to health, is that we really want to have a broad spectrum approach to all levels of well-being, and that changes at different times of our lives. So we hope that once people introduce the type of work we do into their life, it's an ongoing thing, that things change, and once we get those fundamentals right, we can build from there.
Yeah, that's a good foundation. Thanks, Nicki, for talking with me. It's been absolutely wonderful. I'm really pleased to get this sort of ball rolling, and to be able to share what we know and what we love to do, and we share it with love as well. So I'm really pleased about that. Yeah.